I'm Chris Murphy.
And I'm Jennifer Logan.
And we're the Community Theater Heroes.
We host a weekly podcast where we interview theater companies,
actors,
casting directors,
playwrights,
composers,
and other theater artists to give our listeners helpful advice, tips, and insight for their own careers.
And life in general, because we believe that live theater has the power to make the world a better place.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 9 of the Community Theater Heroes podcast.
In this episode, we interview artistic director of the Rose City Shakespeare Company, Rachel Aanstad.
Rachel is currently directing a unique take on the classic Shakespearean tragedy, Romeo and Juliet, which plays at the Alberta Rose Theater April 27th and 29th.
Hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned till the end to find special coupon codes for their show on the 27th and the 29th.
You heard it here first. Nah. I'm not editing that out. Hey everyone, welcome to the Community Theater Heroes podcast. Jen just choked on her coffee because she was not ready for me to do that. You never know what's going to happen with Chris Murphy.
Gorilla coffee drink.
Well, anyway, welcome to our latest episode. Today, we have a very special guest, Rachel Aanstad.
Hello. Thank you so much.
We are recording in Rachel's basement.
Yes.
The exact text was the enchanted
basement. Yes, that's where we are.
I sent Chris a text and was like, is this how we die? In the enchanted basement? Is that today?
Yes it is.
Well, it would honestly make too much a mess and it would get all over the costumes and I honestly can't be bothered. So if you were looking for that, you're going to have to go to somebody else's basement. I'm sorry.
The disenchanted basement.
Yes.
So Rachel is the artistic director of Rose City Shakespeare Company.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Which is in Portland, in case you didn't know. Hopefully you know where that is.
Oregon. Portland, Oregon.
Not Portland, Maine.
No.
That's far away.
They have a really cool show coming up.
Yes. Can you tell us about it?
I would love to tell you about it. So we are doing Romeo and Juliet, Blood and Honor, an Orcish Love Story. And this is basically the classic Romeo and Juliet with most of the text intact, only performed by orcs.
I love it. And why orcs?
Well, I play a lot of World of Warcraft, and I think a lot about Shakespeare, and I listen to a lot of rock music. And so for me, this is a natural combination. This is a Thursday evening.
So we are fast
for
friends.
me.
We just become best friends.
And to be honest, what kind of started me on this train of thought was that I was getting ready to rehearse in January, February. Last year, January, February in Portland were abominable. We had 2 blizzards, and I thought, oh my gosh, what happens if people can't get to the enchanted basement?
Awful.
What are we going to do? And so I was looking for a virtual world that we could possibly rehearse in case we had another terrible winter.
Whoa.
And in World of Warcraft, you can get in there, you can play the first 20 levels absolutely free. And so I thought, okay, this will be an alternative rehearsal space. And then I thought...
Virtually.
Yes, a virtual rehearsal space.
In World of Warcraft?
In World of Warcraft.
Yeah, so she designed a rehearsal space in World of Warcraft because the weather's so
basically bad. There already. You can just go into the starter zone in a role-playing server and be an actual role player and do whatever you want. And then I thought, but then bummer, we're going to be in real life and have to do it as humans. And I was like, wait a minute. We can do whatever we want. And
That's so fascinating.
Then and the more that I read Romeo and Juliet, I'm going to confess, it's not a play that I knew that well before we started. I thought I knew it. Right? We all know what happens. Romeo and Juliet dies. But the more I read the play, the more I was like, these people are orcs. They are all about blood and honor. There's a scene where right after Romeo has killed Tybalt, Juliet's cousin, and Juliet is crying over everything. And her mother comes in and says, "Oh, Juliet, I'm so sorry. Everything's gone wrong. Would you like to poison Romeo? I think then you'd feel better because I know you're crying over your cousin Tybalt." And Juliet, who's a very sharp young person, says, "Oh, let me poison Romeo." And her mother says, "Good idea, honey." To her 13-year-old daughter.
Typical Norman Rockwell.
Typical,
family.
exactly. And
The turkey's pulse.
these are basically, people very full of passion, like to solve their problems with blood, and it just fits in beautifully with
orcish,
orc culture. In addition, orc culture is very gender equality. Male and female orcs fight equally in battle and everything else, and so I liked that about orc culture. There's a great many things to admire about orc culture.
Yeah, you don't really see that kind of in some of those representations of orcs. It's kind of a little bit like, for example,
She's really searching right now.
Well, Lord of the Rings, no, you're right. All the orcs look
kind of
very
villainized.
hyper-masculine.
Yeah. Yes,
very hyper-masculine.
yes.
And
if we're talking about the visual representation of them.
And that's, I feel, more a reflection of our culture than orc culture per se. So when you go play World of Warcraft, then there's male and female fighters, and you can play any role you want. It doesn't matter what your gender is in World of Warcraft.
Now, are all the characters in here orcs, or
Every
did you guys
single
do a kind of a species thing?
Nope. Every
Okay.
single character is an orc. Basically, the idea is that a tribe of orcs moved to Portland, decided to go into theater to be kind of less conspicuous, where normally they have to cover their faces up with various human shades, and now they can be revealed in their true orc glory on the Alberta Rose Theatre stage.
So, is the concept the actors are orcs?
The
or actors playing orcs?
The actors themselves are orcs, and in fact, we made a little promotional video where one of our orc actors made a makeup tutorial for how to make yourself attractive at a poisoning if you're an orc.
That's amazing.
How to find shades to match your natural green color and everything else.
Orcish
So we've had a
contouring.
lot of fun. Exactly, orcish contouring. Let me tell you, you have to pick different colors when you're starting with a green skin color base.
So, were there any challenges? Have there been any challenges mounting a show like this with such a unique concept?
I have to say that it's been absurdly easy. In fact, in some ways, much easier than a normal production, just because so many people got so excited about the concept early on, and I attracted a much wider range of actors. Normally, I suspect people are intimidated by Shakespeare, but I got a lot of younger actors who felt like they could relate to it because I was doing orcs and felt more confident coming to audition, which has been lovely.
Nice.
That is so true. Because when I've done research about your show online, like it seems like there's quite a bit of buzz about it. Like,
I'm so happy to hear
very
that.
excited about the concept. It's very different, and you're right. Like Shakespeare can be really intimidating to people, and so this is so much fun. And I think that's why also it's probably been so easy for you. It's fun,
It is. It's
combining
fun.
so many things you're passionate about.
It very much so. I'll say it's a difficult play in some ways. Just Romeo and Juliet is difficult, partly because people have all these preconceived notions, and so you have to figure out a way. How do you make the balcony scene fresh? And so on. And actually, the balcony scene is one of the main reasons we're doing Romeo and Juliet, because Adam at the Alberta Rose pointed up at the balcony and said, "I've always wanted to see Romeo and Juliet done here." And I said, "We can do that for you." So
It's not going to be how you think it's going
no,
to be.
he is our biggest supporter. When I called him and said, "What do you think about orcs?" he said, "Oh my gosh, that's wonderful." So he's been tremendously supportive all the way along. And there are internal balconies inside the Alberta Rose, and it's super exciting to get to use those.
That's really cool because, I took this this directing class once, and they had mentioned, it was a directing Shakespeare class, and they had kind of, they said that when you do your concept, you're saying something with every choice you make, what time period it is, what costumes, and it's a statement. So what is your guys' statement in doing orcs with Romeo and Juliet? What's kind of an underlying, is there a social comment you wanted to make?
Oh, there definitely is. It creates a distance between ourselves and what we're watching. And sometimes in that little bit of space, then we can perceive truths about ourselves that are maybe too painful to look at. And in this case, Romeo and Juliet can be a play about the difficulties that different generations have communicating with each other and the problems that can result from that. And so all of the costuming, all of the staging is meant to emphasize that difference between the generations. So there's no gender difference in terms of costumes. The costumes are the same no matter what gender somebody is. But what there are distinctions is, are you a Capulet? If you're a Capulet, you wear gold. If you're a Montague, you wear purple. If you're an older generation, then you wear these sort of big robe caftan things. If you're part of the younger generation, then you wear these pants and tunics and lots of fabric, lots of different kinds of fabric.
Did you make all these costumes in yourself?
In-house. We make everything in-house. We do what I call handmade theater. I feel like an awful lot of theater is very spare or very slick. And because we have the technology now with CNC machines and people with wonderful skills, everything can look, for my mind, a little too polished. And so there becomes this dividing line between the theater company and the audience, where the audience is looking at something that they couldn't possibly begin to know where to start to make. So I like to have all of my costumes, all of my props be just at that edge between, oh, that looks really cheesy, and
like approachable?
Approachable. So we use wooden swords. I buy all my fabric from thrift stores, specifically the bins, for those of you who know the magic of the bins.
Oh, the Goodwill bins.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And so, I can go in there and buy fabric, sheets and curtains, amazing things for, whatever, $1.29 a pound or something. And so we bring those home, and thanks to Rose Long, who's my stage manager, production assistant, and costume technician, she helps me sew all these together, and we go from there.
So let's talk a little bit more about handmade theater. Don't make fun of me.
Canadian. Let's talk a little bit. Sorry, couldn't
I'd like to, hear more about handmade theater, and it sounds like one of the great benefits of handmade theater is it encourages audience members to maybe try it on their own.
Exactly. I want people to try it on their own. Theater should not be something that just some people do and not other people. In the past, people did handmade theater all the times in their parlors, in their basements. Most of us did it as kids. So I want people to feel like this is something that they can do, because if they do it themselves, they're going to be, from a purely selfish standpoint, interested in seeing how other people do it too. And so I'm really happy to see the cosplay movement. All of that, I feel like, is moving us more towards a culture that embraces handmade theater. Now,
that's a really cool concept. I mean, I feel like theater so often kind of...
it's been stuffy. It's about...
it's been stuffy.
A weird competition sometimes with some theaters, but you're taking the opposite approach, where you're saying, we're taking it way, way down. It's not that intimidating.
It doesn't have to be intimidating, and you can make...
I love that.
You can make beauty out of anything. You can make something gorgeous out of whatever you're given. So you have to have a cohesive vision. And your director and your costume designer and your set designer and your lighting designer and your prop designer all have to get along. In this case, that's all me.
How are you doing? Like you?
Let's hope you get along with yourself.
Most of the time, there have been some conflicts.
So difficult to work with.
There have been some conflicts. But I will say that meetings are very short. Or they're very long because they never end, because I'm constantly having this conversation with myself of what lighting am I going to use? What costumes am I going to use? It goes on and on. But my background, I have an MFA in scenography from Humboldt State University.
What is scenography for?
So
I don't know what scenography
that is
so it sounds
something
like
that's
fancy.
more common in Europe, and it's less common here because of the way that we're structured with unions and everything else, that everybody stays in their lane. But scenography is the concept where one person designs the costumes, lighting, set, props, the whole visual feeling of the show. And because a lot of my background is in painting, that really appealed to me. When a painter sits down to paint, they don't find somebody else to decide what the people in the painting are going to wear. They don't go find somebody else to decide what kind of light they're going to use. You just paint the thing and go on with your life. And so that was a big reason why I started this company, because I knew I was going to drive anybody else crazy by my desire to control everything. Because
It's very self-sacrificial.
right?
I'm a giver.
Yeah.
How long has your company been around?
Just a year.
Just a year?
We
Wow.
just celebrated our year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you so
Congratulations.
much. Thank you.
When's the anniversary?
It was just a few days ago. I filed a year the LLC papers. I renewed them. So I think in the
amazing.
future we'll go for April 1st, just because I like the symbolism of that.
Right.
But yeah, just for a year. And we started with our first production, I got that on the brain, Midsummer Night's Dream. And we did that at Hip Bone.
Okay.
And I had a very wonderful and patient cast as I figured out a whole bunch of things. And then we did Lysistrata, burlesque at the Alberta Rose, which was super fun. Yes, yes. So my long-suffering stage manager, production assistant wandered into a closet and said, "What are all these giant paper mache phalluses doing here?" I'm like, "Well, we might do Lysistrata again," and I would hate to
Just in case.
start all over.
You never know.
It's a prop.
It's
for
not
a
mine.
show.
Yeah.
I'm holding it for someone. That's
my
so cool. I
goodness.
love the way that you're approaching this, especially in the beginning. It's so Portland, and in the sense that it's we were talking about it before we started recording. Reduce, reuse, recycle. It's low budget. So I mean, there's a lot of companies that are listening to us that aren't in Portland, that are just starting their own companies, and finance is a huge part of that.
Oh, it's
and the way
everything.
you're approaching this is like, I'm 3 people. I'm doing 18 different jobs. We've got a tiny
Yeah,
budget.
a lot
We're
of
in
people can
Goodwill.
relate with that.
And so it's amazing. I'm so excited. Are you guys, is there a way that it's going to be recorded so people who are listening could see it?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I wish.
I wish I could afford a videographer. If any videographer wants to come forward and help me record this, I would love it. I thought about doing a Kickstarter just to afford a videographer, but I'm busy making 20 costumes,
I bet.
and painting
Reach
the
out,
sets
yeah.
upstairs. So that it's been a little
I saw that
daunting.
video.
Yeah.
I saw it last night.
So I'll be doing a video capture,
Okay.
which is basically just setting up my camera at one end,
Okay.
which is not the same. Pretty soon we're going to have a professional capture of our original Midsummer Night's Dream production, but that's not up yet either. So, but any videographers out there, I'd
Let's talk
love
after.
to work something out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Deal. So,
You had wow.
I know.
You had mentioned, intersectional Shakespeare.
Thank
And
you.
I'm not familiar with what that is. And maybe there are others that are listening that aren't. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
I'd love to. So, intersectionalism is the idea that bigotry is not just a one-faceted thing. So, somebody who's homophobic and somebody who's racist is going to treat people in the LGBTQ spectrum who are of color worse than they're going to treat somebody who's in the LGBTQ spectrum that is Caucasian, and how all those work together, all those different biases work together to create difficulties for people. And that we need to recognize that for certain, say, feminist solutions, that sometimes those feminist solutions only work for Caucasian women above a certain social class. Sometimes they only work for wealthy people. Sometimes they only work for people below a certain social class. And when I see Shakespeare performed, very often there's a whole lot of real pale, very male people up there in between the ages of 30 and 50. And because of that, a lot of people who are not middle-aged, pale, male people feel left out. They feel like Shakespeare isn't for them. They feel like Shakespeare doesn't represent them. And nothing could be farther from the truth. In Shakespeare's time, there were people of color, both in the audience, on the stage, backstage, throughout Elizabethan society. But because they didn't discuss color and ethnicity the same way that we do, we don't recognize it in the language. And then the Victorians went through and basically whitewashed everything. Theater itself went through about 100 years of being illegal and disgraced, and so then when theater, and Shakespeare in particular, came back, it all had to be very upper class, very white, and very male for the most part. And unfortunately, Shakespeare has suffered as a result. So when I cast, I'm casting very gender fluid. I don't worry about the gender of the person that I'm casting. I worry about their energy. I worry about their chemistry with the other actors in the cast, how that's all going to work. Because for the most part, gender turns out to be the least important thing when you're putting on at least Shakespeare.
Yeah, especially
I
Shakespeare.
can tell.
Yeah.
So we did an all-female 12th night, which was super fun. And the women who female-identified actors, some of them had a choice whether to play their character as male or female. Some of them did not. Some characters, it's a gender issue play, and so some of the female-identified actors had to play in drag, which they enjoyed. Basically, if you give somebody a sword, they don't care what gender they are, is what I've learned. That's really the issue. Either a sword or a nice costume.
Childish. Like, we're all playing.
We want to play. We want to play. And so I try to give actors as much of that fun as I can, and then I try to give the audience the opportunity to see themselves up on stage. Unfortunately, an awful lot of talent gets passed by in this town because they happen to be female-identified actors between the ages of 30 and 60. And let me tell you, there are a bunch of freaking talented people out there, and I want you all. I want you.
I'm done. Wrap it up.
And
we're done.
It's just been super fun, and I've met the most amazing, wonderful people as a result.
I know a few people in your cast.
Yay!
I'm not allowed to confirm or deny who they are. but they
will
it.
kill
They
her.
love it. I'll be dead.
Oh
But,
no!
they love
Usually
working.
actors like publicity.
Oh, that was Christopher's
Was it?
phone. That was Christopher's phone on the podcast. Who didn't silence it?
Offer up. I'm not even selling anything.
But they love working with you.
Oh,
They
thank
love
you.
working
That's
with you.
wonderful.
That's one of the
to
reasons
hear.
why I'm coming.
Oh,
and
thank you so much.
now that I've had the opportunity to hear so much more of your concepts behind, the philosophy driving your production company, it's wonderful.
Thank you.
What sounds really cool about what you're doing is it all seems to come back to this idea of play. and which is what we're doing as actors. And we forget it. A lot of companies forget it. You know, we're very serious about our work, and there's nothing wrong with being serious about the work, but what we're doing is play.
It absolutely,
play.
We are playing, and I really try to bring that into the rehearsal room. So I feel it's very important that I trust my actors. We're very collaborative in terms of how scenes progress. I don't have a solid idea in my head before we start, because if I did, I would miss out on so much that the actors have to offer. So
great advice.
A lot of, if you see a great moment in the show, the odds are very good that it was an actor's idea to put it in there. So I love eliciting that from my actors. I encourage my actors who imbibe, I encourage them to drink during the show. We have...
When are you auditioning?
We have a kegerator.
What is happening?
We have a kegerator here.
Can I understudy?
Midsummer Night's Dream is coming up. I need a Lysander. We'll talk. So I encourage my actors to relax. We know Shakespeare did neither write nor rehearse nor perform sober. So
Love this company.
And my feeling is that, see, I don't drink at all, but if one or two actors are drinking, it just changes the whole atmosphere. And it's not like they get drunk, but people loosen up. They recognize that, again, we're playing here, and it's okay to let go.
Sorry, he's motioning for me to stop active listening. But once you
She
brought it
never
up,
listens.
I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, girl. Yes.
Well, we're almost out of time, but there's a couple more. I'm sorry, that's just the way clocks work. But there are a few other questions we wanted to hit on. We had asked you to send us some things ahead of time, and one of them is what are three things actors you see in auditions that they're doing to hurt themselves? You had mentioned one thing. They say they're only interested in the large part.
Yeah, that's a no-go, people. I'm serious. You're an actor. Lie. Really, if all you want is a big part, do not tell me that. I'm building an ensemble. I'm building a cast. It's a company. You're here to experience being in the show. So if all you want is one of the named parts, you may or may not get it. I'll be absolutely blunt. I tend to cast the big parts from people who had small parts in previous shows, because I know that they're going to be committed, they're going to show up on time, they're going to do all the things that you need an actor to do from a professional level to make your show a success. So that's really number one.
Anything else?
Let's see, what else did I say here? Will you remind me, please? Oh, where are we?
She's consulting her.
I'm in my notes. Yeah, that was the other Rachel.
Put that other hat on.
Yeah, that was producer Rachel. Yes, they spend more time talking about themselves than asking about the production. Okay, this does not happen very often, but when it does, it's an instant no. And I don't mean I want to hear all about your ideas. I want to hear about your passion. I don't need to hear all about everything that you ever did in theater. I can see that. Hopefully you brought me a CV. So what I'm really interested in is, why do you want to be in this production? And I've got to say, this is, look, to all you actors out there that are freaking out thinking, oh my gosh, I better not say anything about myself. That's not what I mean. You are not the person I'm talking to. Trust me, the person I'm talking to, the person I'm talking to is saying, oh, I never do that. So by all means, don't worry about it. The other thing, final third thing, isn't necessarily a complete deal breaker, but will, if you insist on it, mean you don't get casted. Shakespeare wrote Shakespeare's plays. End of discussion. If you want to discuss other ideas about that, you are welcome to do that on the many internet forums that are obsessed with that particular issue.
Don't come into my audition and tell me
the enchanted basement.
Do not come into the enchanted basement and tell me that my personal bard and savior did not exist. That's an immediate no. Other than that, though, please just come in and relax. I try to make things very informal in a sense, except that I make sure that I'm on time. I try to make sure the enchanted basement is reasonably clean so you don't fall down the stairs. And just relax. I'm looking for presence. I'm looking for enthusiasm for the project. I'm looking for who you can bring, what you can bring. Can you play the ukulele? Can you ride a unicycle? Can you juggle? Because I incorporate all of that into my shows. If somebody has a special talent, if they can sing or whatever. Currently, our Juliet is a phenomenal singer. We have a live band called Toast who has composed all original music for the show, including a beautiful song with the lyrics from Shakespeare's Sonnet 55, which if you go and read it, people. It's really cool, is very heavy metal.
Well, Rachel, you mentioned that you had some sponsors too.
I do. Thank you. So we're in the middle right now of the build because, of course, we only have 6 days. So I'm madly painting in my garage. I'd like to thank my husband, Mark Aanstad, for building everything because he's a phenomenal woodworker and technical director. And I would very much like to thank Mr. Plywood for giving us a bunch of Luan and some actual plywood. Very generous of them. And also Beaumont Do It Best Hardware over there on Fremont, who gave us a bunch of casters. And let me tell you, those puppies are not cheap. So I'm so grateful. I could not do theater if it wasn't for these options. And I want to encourage all you theater folks out there. Well, please don't go to the same sponsors I went to. I don't want to overwhelm them.
Don't drain them.
Don't drain them, please.
Don't drain the well.
Yeah, don't drain the well. But go to the places where you would buy your stuff anyway and say, I'm putting on a show. And you would be surprised at how generous these people can be.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Rachel. We are so excited to see your show next week.
I'm going Sunday.
All right, so it's Alberta Rose, April 27th and 29th. We have 2 shows on Sunday, a matinee and an evening show. And I want to give the people who listen to this podcast a special deal. If they go to the ticket office and say the word Community Theater Heroes, yes, Community Theater Heroes, they can get a $15 ticket, which is $10 off the door price.
Wow. You heard it, people.
And
you thought you would not get anything for listening to this podcast.
You thought you lost 30 minutes of your life.
And there's one more thing. If you go to my Facebook page, please go to my Facebook page and my Twitter. If you will like my Facebook page, Rose City Shakespeare Company, we have a group and a regular page. If you will join either one of those, share, comment, and like one of the posts about this particular production, then you have a chance to win 2 free tickets.
What?
Awesome, guys.
Whoa.
Woo. Who. That was weird.
Yeah, I don't know what
that. I don't know what that was.
You're getting orcish.
He's very orcish in the face right now.
Well, thank you so much again, Rachel. We are so excited to know you
so
and see
much.
what our company is
I
doing.
really enjoyed this.
And we will see you at the show.
Awesome. Thank you.
And that's our show. Thank you so much for listening.
We want to give a big thanks to Rachel for being on the show today. You can get tickets to her upcoming production of Romeo and Juliet, Blood and Honor, and Orcish Love Story at albertarosetheater.com.
As always, please let us know what you think about our show by commenting on our Facebook page, leaving us a positive review on iTunes, and subscribe to our newsletter.
Want to learn more about us, be interviewed on the podcast, or find out about some of our upcoming contests? Then please visit communitytheaterheroes.com. Don't laugh at me.
Not marble nor the gilded monuments of princes shall outlive this powerful rhyme. But you shall shine more bright in these contents than unswept stone besmeared with sluggish time. So tell the judgment that yourself arise. You live in shall statues overturn, and broils root out the work of masonry. Nor Mars' sword, nor war's quick fire shall burn the living record of your memory. So till the judgment that yourself arise, you live in this and dwell in lovers' eyes. Against death and all oblivious enmity shall you praise forth, your praise shall still find room, even in the eyes of all posterity that wear this world out to the ending doom. So till the judgment